Seven-story building collapses in India, killing dozens of men, women and children. They were living there while construction continued above their heads. Is India growing too far, too fast? And is anyone sticking up for the poor? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Ghida Fakhry. In New Delhi, India's Prime Minister has been talking about sustainable development and alleviating poverty. In Mumbai, rescue workers are pulling dozens of bodies out of a collapsed building. They were poor construction workers living with their families. They perished in seconds. Is this really acceptable in one of the world's top 10 economies in 2013? We'll look at that with our guests in just a moment, but first, this report from Sourav Roy.
Looking for survivors under the rubble of what was once a seven-story building. People who live in the area helped the rescue services throughout the night. A grim task. The half-built building collapsed shortly after 6:30 on Thursday evening in Thane, a suburb of Mumbai. Witnesses couldn't believe what they saw.
The building collapsed like a pack of cards within 3 to 4 seconds. It hardly took 3 seconds to collapse. It just tilted a bit and came down. We saw it happening.
As the sun came up, the extent of the devastation became clear, as did the difficulty rescuers face. For some, it's too late, but no one is giving up.
There is a possibility that victims can be rescued within 48 hours. I have myself rescued people even after 3 days from the debris. So the rescue operation is basically a slow process, which is conducted very carefully so that the maximum number of victims can be saved and rescued.
It's believed that many of those buried are the families of the construction workers who were living there. Police are now looking for the contractors and owners of what they say was an illegally constructed building.
We have filed a case for culpable homicide against the owner of this building. We are trying to find them and will soon arrest them.
Building collapses happen with frightening regularity in India. The country has generally strong building codes, but the lack of enforcement to control illegal construction has exposed the problem once again. The public will demand an inquiry and the government will agree, but no one has the answer yet as to how to control illegal construction and prevent this sort of thing happening again. Sourav Roy, Inside Story, New Delhi.
Let's now hear from our guests in Singapore. I'm joined by Sourav Roy, who's an Asian Affairs Analyst. In New Delhi, Amrish Pandey from the student wing of the ruling National Congress Party, and also in New Delhi, Madhav Raman, an architect. Madhav Raman, in New Delhi, this certainly isn't the first incident of its kind. How much of a serious problem is this in India, and who is to blame for it?
Well, that's a bit of a complex question. The people responsible for building those buildings are ultimately responsible for mishaps like this. These include the builder, the contractor, the architect, if any architect is involved. And it happens, sadly, with surprising regularity for various reasons.
You say they happen with surprising regularity. What is being done, though, to prevent them from happening? I mean, how thoroughly do these cases get investigated? Who gets arrested, if anyone?
The investigations this happens at a non-federal level. This happens state-wise. It's based on the kind of police investigation systems that happen to be in place, and so they vary from state to state. And what's being done to prevent this from a regulatory point of view, surprisingly little. We're still stuck with the regulations that we've had for many, many years now.
Amrish Pandey, also in New Delhi, the local authorities say the building was not authorized. They say they're now looking for the builder to try to arrest him, at least question him. Is this good enough, though? Should they be left off the hook when this building had been built very, very quickly in a matter of just a few weeks, 3 to 4 months? There was additional construction going on. So obviously it wasn't done overnight. They knew this building was standing, that many families were living in the lower floors and that more construction was going on. Should they be left off the hook?
First of all, we are in a sad situation because the building has collapsed and lots of people died in this case. Second thing, before the inquiry's report had come, we can't say anything about these things because the inquiry body is set up by government and they are doing their best. After the report will submit to the government, then we are going to say anything about the situation, actually who are involved in this case.
Well, there is an investigation, but how could the local authorities have failed to spot what was going on? They were very quick to say that this building was constructed in a way that wasn't authorized. How could they have not seen what was going on?
First of all, we are not in a situation to say anything about because the report had not come in our one. Whoever is involved in this case, whoever has done anything wrong, we will be punished by the judicial system. Our judicial system is already in a strong position. They will take action against those who are guilty in this case.
But if action had been taken against those who are guilty in previous cases, would we be here today?
First of all, we are working for the who are injured in this building collapse. So we are doing, and judicial system and the judicial body who are going to investigate the case, they are working on there. So before the report come out, we can't say anything about this case.
Sourav Roy, do you agree with this, that the authorities need to be given more time while the investigation gets underway? Should the debate be about these quote-unquote illegal buildings, or should it be about how these illegal buildings are there in the first place?
I'm just appalled at the way such situations keep cropping in India time and again. And it's not just one building in Mumbai or a pack of colonies in New Delhi or any other city, metropolitan city in India. It's just the whole system, the way it works. You've got this whole colonies after colonies of illegal settlements that have cropped up right under the nose of the politicians, the minders of the municipal corporation, and all bureaucrats as well as those who are governing the city. And my question is that if such a thing has been happening at such a rampant pace, then what have the others been doing? Has everybody turned a blind eye towards it? If yes, then it's very sad. And if no, then I think that the strictest and the sternest actions need to be taken against people who practice in such kind of cheap constructions that put not just life and property, but also public security at risk.
Amrish Pandey, are local authorities and politicians turning a blind eye to what is going on?
No, first of all, the thing is that politician never made a building. A building made by a construction company and construction authority.
But they need permits, don't they?
We can't say...
They need permits from the authorities.
Sorry?
They need permits from the authorities, building authorities, that there needs to be a certain amount of regulation going on.
Definitely, whoever is done this work, who are involved in this situation, the construction company, we are, first of all, we say, who make this construction, and the authority of construction will definitely be punished, because this is the case of cheap. I think so. Mr. Roy said that this is a cheap infrastructure work. So there is no involvement in politician there. So how we can't blame the politician. First of all, a politician is eligible to give an answer what he done, but the work is done by the construction company.
Madhav Raman, how do you respond to this?
I don't quite agree with that.
Madhav Raman, first off, as an architect, how do you respond to that? Are construction companies to blame first and foremost, or is there too much corruption going on within this lucrative construction business?
It's a little complicated. So the thing is that I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Pandey in as much as the lawmakers or the elected politicians are not actually creating the regulatory framework. It's something which is a form of delegated legislation. It's formulated by urban planners and city engineers. Now, this group of individuals creates a master plan and a regulatory framework of statutes that then enforce how buildings are constructed and how the procedures of how they will monitor construction processes. And that's where the lacuna lies, and that's where the gap lies. So, I mean, to kind of require government to respond, it's actually not the political arm of the government that needs to kind of pull itself up, but it's actually people who are responsible for creating the regulatory framework, which is delegated legislation. It's not laws that are argued on the floor of a parliament or of a local legislative council.
Sourav Roy, is this just an architecture problem? Is it a problem of having adequate laws, of enforcing these laws, of building too fast, building using cheap material, or is it much more complex than that? How much of it is a policy and planning problem?
I think it's a far deeper problem than just putting the blame on cheap materials. And I won't quite agree with the logic that Mr. Pandey and Mr. Madhav are belting out right now. I think there is complicity at all levels, and compliance procedures and compliance mechanisms are compromised. And if you tell that it's just civil engineers and town planners and urban development ministries that are responsible for the situation, well, may I just remind that at the top of the ladder is sitting a politician who would definitely want to indulge in populist policies in a country like India, where vote bank matters a lot at the end of the day. And that is quite evident in what's happening in Delhi itself. Just look at in Delhi, there are hundreds of colonies which have now been told that will be legalized by 2014. Why? Because there's elections around the corner. And so if you are legalizing illegal colonies and the government or politicians are endorsing it and passing a bill into the parliament for that, then yes, the problem is not just with cheap construction materials, it is also with the mentality of trying to get votes at whatever possible way, in whichever possible manner, and that also means abetting such illegal practices and not taking any stern action against them.
And of course, as we've been saying, this is by no means an isolated incident. Here's some other cases just over the past couple of years. In February, a bridge being built at Mumbai's main airport collapsed, killing 3 people and injuring 7. In December last year, in the city of Pune, 13 people were killed when a slab being placed on a building fell apart. And one of the worst incidents was in 2010. 69 people were killed when a residential building collapsed. Madhav Raman, is real action taken when complaints are being made about some of these buildings, the flimsiness of the architecture, and so on? Or does it largely depend on where the complaint comes from? For example, when you've got poor construction workers living in a building that has been poorly constructed, perhaps summoning the courage to make a complaint, are they even listened to?
I doubt that. I don't think they are. And you're right. I mean, there is this whole problem of whether people are empowered to kind of complain or they see the tracks. I mean, there are procedures available to them to complain against this. But I'd just like to kind of explain a little bit about this, that in terms of regulations and getting the relevant permissions and the certifications as a building gets constructed, the responsibility in this country lies with an architect. Now, I would hazard a guess that a majority, close to 80%, 70% of buildings that are constructed in urban India don't actually have an architect. And the kind of sidetracking of this process where the responsibility of ensuring the safety of a building lies with a professional, qualified individual. Now, when I say architect, it could be an architect or a chartered engineer as well. I mean, that's up to the people who are trying to construct. So my point is that we are in a situation where the final certification required for constructed buildings in most cities are not there. So in Delhi, I think, in Thane, I believe 75 to 80% of the buildings that have people residing in them don't have occupancy certifications. And this is a government, Thane Municipal Corporation figure. So, I mean, it is a grave, grave problem. And it involves the lawmakers and the politicians to kind of carry a stick that enforces, that kind of encourages urban planners and city engineers to kind of do their job better.
Amrish Pandey.
Right now we're caught in a point. Yeah, sorry.
No, forgive me for interrupting, but I wanted to take that point to Amrish Pandey. He belongs to the youth wing of the ruling National Congress Party. What is your party doing to improve the situation? Whoever is to blame here, and there's a lot of blame to go around, who is there ultimately to protect the rights of some of these poorer communities, to make sure that they have access to adequate housing?
First of all, our economic growth is going on. We are the third position in the world economic growth right now. What we are talking about, this building collapse and illegal building, there is the two separate case. If a building is illegal, that is another problem. A building is collapsed, that is the main issue. Why building is collapsed? Because of the construction builders used a low quality of product for that, in that way. Second thing, Mr. Roy said that in Delhi there is many illegal colonies. Because of the people are staying there in Delhi, lots of poor people are staying here. So they have also a right to stay in Delhi. And for that case, government did some colony to legal. And there is not a collapse problem. These problems comes out from a big type of construction level. For in this way, there is some big company are involved in this case. So you can't connect this condition to the economic growth.
You're talking about the economic growth, and you are right. I mean, the economy in India is projected to grow in 2013 between 6% and 7%. But does India have to take a deeper look into the human side of this economic growth to make sure that everyone in India reaps some of the benefit of this economic growth? And we know the vast majority doesn't.
And I would also like to ask Amrish Pandey over here, is the growth in India really sustainable? I mean, you're talking about economic growth. Is the growth really sustainable at the grassroots level? And no matter what, whether the buildings are illegal in Mumbai or whether it's settlement in Delhi, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people in Delhi who are living illegally in illegal settlements. I mean, the complicity of people involved in allowing them to live like that, and to see that such illegal colonies are legalized, it's absolutely appalling, and there's no excuse for that at all.
All right, well, there's a lot of temptation today in Indian cities to build fast and make as much money as possible, while cutting corners, as we've seen. Developers see millions of people moving from poor rural areas to busy urban centres every single year. And it's a trend that is set to continue. By 2050, there will be as many as 900 million more people living in India's major cities. Right now, the government estimates that nearly 19 million households in urban areas are in need of decent homes. The vast majority of those people looking for homes are, as in this case, on a very low income. Madhav Raman, with such a major migration going on of poor people from rural areas to urban centres, and the pressure all this puts on faster, cheaper construction to accommodate them, what will need to be done, in your opinion and in your experience, to make sure that these very same poor communities don't fall victim once again to the current system?
I think, I think that there are multiple tracks that need to be explored simultaneously. Every city in our country has, or is supposed to have, a master plan or a city development plan. Now, these plans need to accommodate the requirements of these poor people and these communities. Many of these cities expand, eating up rural settlements at their periphery. So the peri-urban development, which fall outside the ambit of a master plan, there needs to be provisions, procedural regulatory provisions that can take care of them. Thane is a suburb of Mumbai. Chances are that if you are in, say, South Mumbai or Central Delhi, the regulatory enforcement and procedures are a lot stronger, and it's not that easy to kind of sidestep rules and procedures. But on the outskirts, it's the wild, wild west, and very often, developers have political connections and friends who kind of assist in easing the pressure of regulatory frameworks on them while they're constructing. So And there is, of course, you're right, there is also the question of construction technology and appropriate technology to kind of build in a manner in which housing stock is accessible to poor people. That's another big issue. So when you talk about cheap materials, it's not really so much, it's to try and be able to cost these buildings in a way in which they can be accessible to people who really need those houses. So it's a bit of two or three things.
Two or three things, Amrish Pandey. The wild, wild west. Is this acceptable that this situation should be the norm today in a country, in the second most populous country in the world? 1.2 billion people live in India. It's one of the 10 biggest economies in the world. Is it acceptable that this should be left to that, the wild, wild west? Or should there be more serious regulation with the government showing how serious it is to enforcing some of these laws?
Government, Indian, we all of us agree with you. Indian economic situation is other thing, but this case, as government already has taken some action against. FIR failed the authority against this construction company. So we can't collaborate with these things. Our economic working, we are developing country. We are working on there. We have a world's second largest population in India. So there is a lots of problem. For in that way, there is some cases that come out. That is not the main thing. Where in India, you know, cultural diversity. There is the new concept of rural urbanization. There is lots of problem is happening. In this case, some incident had happened. So we are working on that case. This incident is wrong, and we are facing such type of incident. We will work harder for this. This case will not repeat in coming future.
Well, this issue has generated. The issue has generated a lot of debate. Let's take a quick look at some of the reaction we've been getting on Facebook. Emmanuel Nangilia says it's an indication of poor management in the construction sector. Major action is needed to prevent such an event happening again. Rosemary Dominguez says, sad, someone needs to be held accountable. And Swathi Manchinkanti tells us, India is full of squatters because of how poor they are. India is growing economically, but not socially. And a lot of its growth comes from less than a fourth of its population. The rest lives in rural areas or in poverty. Sourav Roy, how much change will there need to be for India to be able to move on with all these trends and social developments and economic progression that is going on?
I think India needs a universe of change, and not just one, probably multiverses of change. And the change has to come not just from the society, but at an individual level as well. I'm often amused just to think, how is it that a bunch of people decide that I'm going to construct an illegal building right here in the middle of the town? And that's because the person has the audacity to think that I have a couple of connections with the politicians, with the municipal corporation, I can pull a few strings here and there, and so nobody's going to touch me and I'm just going to go scot-free. And that is the attitude which makes people trespass laws and break them and do whatever they want to do, and it's a total jungle law. But that said, I also recognize what Amrish is saying, that India is a country that's moving very fast and it's growing economically. However, the economic growth cannot be a reason to eclipse its social problems. And as the Latin saying goes, suppressio veri, suggestio falsi, the suppression of truth by itself is a suggestion of falsehood. And the truth is that the people, rural people in India, still do not have access to healthcare, water, sanitation, electricity. There's still over 1 billion people in India who do not have an on-off switch in their life, no electricity. It's just about 100 million Indians who are doing well in the middle-class families in urban cities. The rest of India is still living in dark ages, and that needs to change, and that has to come right from a political will to deep down to an individual intent as well.
A very uneven picture and a call for change. Thank you to all of our guests, Sourav Roy, Amrish Pandey and Madhav Raman. And thank you as always for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. You can find this program and many more on our website, aljazeera.com. Just follow the links for programs and Inside Story. You can also leave us your comments. From me, Ghida Fakhry and the team, thanks for watching.